This
I heard
conference will
Claire.
now be recorded.
Oh, I guess we're going.
All right, welcome everybody. Today is Monday, September 28, 2020 at 3:01 p.m. and this is the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners meeting. I see Commissioner Hunt and I also see Commissioner Hall. So all three commissioners are here and we do have a quorum. First up is the adoption of the consent calendar. I'll ask Christy or Casey to scroll. Thank you. These are items of a routine nature that either staff or commissioners can pull for further discussion or information. And if there's no need to pull for further discussion or information, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move for adoption of the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Next up under reports, first thing up is Echo Mountain Complex Fire update. And I believe Council Belmont and our emergency manager, Jenny Damaris, I think are providing that update for us. Wayne, would you like to start? Oh, Jenny.
You. No, I was just letting you know that I am here and I was going to follow Wayne's lead.
Okay.
Thanks, commissioners. Thanks, Jenny. Yes, this is an update on the Echo Mountain Complex fire. We've really are moving from the response stage to the recovery stage, and a great deal of work has been going on from a lot of partners on what the next steps are to help people recover from this tragic fire. And I think what I'd like to do is we're going to have some specific asks for you and have some discussion about some of the activities we're engaged in. But maybe the first thing that would be useful is to have Jenny give us a little update on, and I'm thinking of Jenny, especially the items of note, give us a little report on the Multi-Agency Resource Center, the FEMA application process, what Red Cross has been doing. And then from there, we'll work into some of the data we're requesting to utilize in making some specific requests, and then what those next steps might look like.
Yes, happy to do so. Thank you for allowing me to have some time on your agenda to just kind of give an update of behind the scenes of what we've been working on. And as Mr. Belmont indicated, I think one of the most beneficial things that we're able to provide to our community members affected by both the fire and the straight line wind event, and then of course the following utility outages that may have affected many households due to loss of power to refrigerators and freezers. That Multi-Agency Resource Center was provided last Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, either 6 to 8-hour, 9-hour shifts each day. We believe that we had over 244 households that attended that event. One of the primary purposes from our perspective was, one, to connect them directly with FEMA, who had a team of 5 representatives there that was able to navigate and assist them with the online application process, or they could answer questions for those that had already put their online application in. And then the second piece to that Multi-Agency Resource Center was really to have a connection with the planning department and solid waste, because those are the first 2 areas that we see that people need to move forward to begin rebuilding, and they need to know, what does this mean for me? So Ano's team from the Director of Planning, I believe off and on, he had about 4 staff there all the time. And then of course, Paul Seitz, our solid waste coordinator, new to the county, but a great resource for us. He was also there all of those times, and you could see that people were navigating directly from the FEMA table right over to their tables to really get that firsthand experience and develop that relationship with those county departments that would be assisting them. Of course, we had behavioral health and Department of Health and Human Services. The school district was there. Many agencies that were there to augment those other community services that they would need. Moving down to some kind of other data information, as Wayne is going to talk about, we requested some data from FEMA about who really was affected, who has interest, the number of applications that have been applied. And I'm looking at my email now, and our liaison from FEMA has already provided us with that information. I'll be forwarding on to Wayne and for the policy group to be able to work on. But just to give you a snapshot, as of yesterday evening, we've already had 459 FEMA individual applications that have been started or are in process. We're also pushing out information to those individuals that have had a claim posted, but perhaps they weren't ineligible. And what we're really saying is don't give up hope completely yet. Remember, this is the federal government. It is challenging. You have to stick with it. Find the pieces that they say that might make you ineligible. Once you talk with your insurance agent, something may change, something may not be covered. So really go back again, look at that application, see if there's something else that you can add to it. Or if you're midway through the process and your application is still pending, really have that tenacity and stick with it, find the pieces that they need, and just continue to work it all the way through. FEMA has already ordered 200 individual inspections. So that means each person who files a claim indicating that they've had some sort of a loss, they will then go to that property to validate the loss was reported, or in the case of a renter, they will contact the landlord of the rental unit to verify that they were actually there and that the home was damaged and so on. To date, of those 200, a really positive number, 174 claims have already been inspected at those sites. So that's really good because that gives a good turnaround of when you will actually see folks that do qualify for some financial assistance. And I will tell you that my teammate Sam, who's not here today, I believe she actually took a call already that indicated community members were already seeing financial assistance, meaning check, flat out money. So that means the system is working, but for some, yes, it will be a long process and it will be very challenging. But I have something that could help with that. Our FEMA liaison, who I believe has been a really great asset to Lincoln County, has indicated that they are now making a move to bring in a FEMA individual outreach center. All details yet to be determined, but it would be hosted in Lincoln City. And the intent of that is to continue to help those community members navigate the application process. We know many of our community members either don't have access to the internet or even a computer, or they don't have the computer skills to be able to do an online application. So that will provide people in person or places they can drop off the hard copy documents. You may not have a scanner at home. You may not be able to upload those digital documents. So I believe they're making good and getting more resources here to help those individuals navigate that application process. The other question regarding data, the Red Cross doesn't necessarily give us daily data. We're working with them to get that information daily. But as of the 24th, they'd had a consistent use of about 198 hotel rooms, which would be serving about 382 individuals served. So, they may have some families in 2 of those hotel rooms. And they're serving approximately 400 meals per day. And the last piece I would add, most of you would be familiar from all the financial, just to give you a perspective of financial potential resources, the federal FMAG, which is specifically for those agencies that responded to the fire. The next one is the FEMA Public Assistance for your public infrastructure. Special districts have access to apply for those funds. That process just opened. We sent our first report to the state with the preliminary information to meet that county threshold. The next would be the FEMA Individual Assistance, which is what the FEMA folks here in town are working on. The next one is the Small Business Administration, which ties in with the Presidential Declaration, which is which some individuals may be required to apply for the Small Business Administration loan before they may qualify for FEMA funds. And each situation is a little different. And then the last piece that we're waiting on, commissioners, that will greatly affect our recovery process is the post-fire mitigation grants. Normally those take about 30 to 60 days for approval, and they're generally tag on to your FEMA public infrastructure grant, approval. However, in this case, we are working very closely with Office of Oregon Emergency Management and our FEMA liaison to push them to make that decision more quickly. 30 to 60 days, we will already be in the middle of our rainy season, and we are looking at our post-fire mitigation are things that we might need boots on the ground in the next 2 to 3 weeks to help with runoff from water because we have a burn scar, also potential land movement, landslides, or even debris flow when perhaps hillsides or slopes give way, and then they actually take, you know, volumes of dirt and earth and trees with them. So lots of things that we are building into our strategy for recovery, but pressuring hard that we want that approval date as quickly as possible. And then the county, as an entity, would need to make the decision about applying for individual assistance, because individuals cannot apply individually. We, as a county, would have to be, if you would, the benefactor, and then the individuals would be sub-applicants. Not unfamiliar to us in Lincoln County. That's how the majority of the homes on the Siletz River were raised, but it is a considerable amount of a heavy lift for us, more so for the planning department. I'll pause there, as that's the sort of the other items that Wayne had referred to.
That's great. Thank you, Jenny. And maybe we can talk about now a little bit kind of the next steps that we're looking at, because we're actually need to be determining what community service needs are for both short-term and long-term. And so we've been looking at a variety of areas there. And one of those, Jenny, why don't you talk a little bit about, we're concerned about immediate housing needs that are being provided by the Red Cross, and what we're going to do to try and extend those services for some period of time.
Yes, absolutely. So as you can imagine, I think the first lens to look at this from is the individual that is currently in a Red Cross provided sheltering, which is a hotel or motel room. And we heard repeatedly over and over again at the Multi-Agency Resource Center, you know, they said my stay is only till the 5th, or my date's only to the 10th. When is this going to end? And so really having that sort of on having a good understanding of when does the American Red Cross sheltering services end. There's not a one size fits all. It's not like it's automatically 15 days or 30 days. I think each disaster situation is represented differently. So working with policy group, our leadership with the Sheriff's Office and Mr. Belmont, we put in a request not only to the Red Cross first to ask what is their transitional time period, so that we would make sure as a county government that we could be ahead of that and meet some of those housing needs, but then also to the state of Oregon to really request on behalf of all counties in Oregon, if they had not already considered when that end date was going to be, that we would ask that at a minimum they request an extension of those housing services for at least 30 days. And I'm actually hearing from our FEMA liaison and other folks at the state that request may even be longer. So I have a feeling we'll have that known as to what that extension will be very quickly. And as we advocated on behalf of our community members, that because this is such a catastrophic disaster, not just here in Lincoln County, but in all counties in Oregon, and is so unfamiliar for us to immediately develop transitional housing, that local government really needed time to evaluate what options were available, and also to have a time for the insurance companies to process through with those property owners to filter out who really will need that transitional period of transitional housing and for what time period. So that request has been put on behalf of Lincoln County community members for the policy group, and I feel confident that we should hear something very soon.
And commissioners, that will then allow us to develop really a longer term housing assessment, so we can figure out what the interim and permanent housing needs are. So we'll be providing some additional resources in order to help do that assessment and look at what our options are for housing. The next issue that we had discussed was the question of potable water. That's come up. We have 8 community water, drinking water systems and 1 public water system, as well as a number of private wells that serve that area. So that is one of the utilities in terms of restoring service for those areas and those properties that we're very concerned about. And maybe I'll just turn it over for a minute back to Chair Jacobson, because we have been doing some formal requests to the Oregon Health Authority, which has regulatory responsibility for drinking water services, and what we're doing in that arena.
Yeah, so all the systems affected out there were not publicly owned. These are all kind of privately owned systems. There's actually several of them, which makes it a little more complicated to navigate, unlike if it were the City of Lincoln City system or something like that. But I have been in several conversations today with the Oregon Health Authority, basically asking them for immediate assistance to basically push resources out to us, or use internal processes and resources they have to have people come out and do physical assessments of the systems. My understanding is some of these systems have already had that done, some have not. That's kind of resource dependent, but have inspections done on the actual systems to see what damage may have occurred. And what damage may need to be fixed to get them working. There's other systems that might currently be working, but they need the actual water coming out of those systems tested to make sure it's safe. And then once we have that information, there hopefully can be some creative problem solving with them on how we create some type of interim solution or how we get those systems fixed. So that's kind of what I've been working on over the weekend and today, and I'm hoping by tomorrow we actually have some more concrete plans in place with how we move forward. But so far they've been fairly receptive, and it's just a matter of kind of getting all our ducks lined up here. So back to
Thank
Wayne.
you.
Yeah.
So the next issue that we've been spending a great deal of time on is for solid waste services and the coordination of all of our debris management activities. And I do see Paul Seitz and Steve Hodge from Lincoln County Public Works and our solid waste district are on the call too. And maybe I'll digress just for a minute here. At the under the auspices of the Oregon Emergency Management and with Emergency Manager Damaris assisting, we actually had a meeting yesterday with representatives from Santa Rosa and Malibu, California, city managers actually for those two jurisdictions who happen to have gone through this exact same process, massive wildfire damage and destruction in their jurisdictions a few years ago. And so they came in and shared some ideas and best practices and concerns with us about what they faced when they were doing it. And I know that amongst the very many things that we discussed in there, the question of what you do with the debris, what the toxicity of that debris can be, how do you go about doing the cleanup was one of those things we spent a lot of time talking about. And I think we're doing some work to try and address those both on a local level and then on a statewide level. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul and Steve maybe for just a few comments here, and then we'll come back and talk about what's happening underway statewide. Now, I'm making a big assumption that they can actually, we've been having this problem with getting connected. Do you guys, you're muted still. Oh, never mind. Okay, let me go back. Just indicate that we are doing some work with our local franchised hauler and through the district. We've already had meetings with DEQ and ODOT, and there is discussion now of undertaking a statewide assessment and cleanup assistance. And again, Chair Jacobson, you actually have had some contact with the governor's office as of today, so maybe you can indicate what we're doing there.
Sure. So the state is putting together a process for them to be the lead agency to do cleanup in all of the counties that were affected by wildfire. You have to kind of opt into that process. So on behalf of the county, I opted us in to have them be the lead agency in cleanup. This happens in stages. So the first thing that happens is they do a household hazardous waste cleanup. And so basically in the next few weeks, they'll be sending teams out, and this is collection of things like gas cans, propane tanks, other accelerants, ammunition, things like that, was not burned up in the fire or maybe partially damaged. So they first get all of that stuff picked up and out of the way, so that as they come in later to do larger debris cleanup, that those things aren't creating more fire hazard essentially, or danger to the people doing that work. So that's the first step. And the state says they'll be ready to do that in a couple of weeks. So like I said, I opted us in to that program and process.
The next area, and Jenny talked about this a little bit during the mark in terms of information that was provided, is around planning and building as we look at rebuilding and replacement of structures in that in the area that was damaged. And so we're setting up a great deal of information locally around the response, what it takes in order to undertake the activities to get you ready to actually rebuild or replace. And this was also an area that I think there's a great deal of information needs to be shared on the appropriate procedures to make sure that what we're doing when we're doing, for instance, the cleanup of those particular properties, it's done in a manner that does not cause further damage to the infrastructure that exists on this on the property, especially because all the properties that were impacted here are actually have subsurface sewage disposal systems. There is no community sewage disposal in this particular area. So these underground septic similar on-site subsurface sewage disposal treatment systems need to be mapped out. They need to be protected when you're doing the work here. They also need to be assessed and determined to be operable so that you can move forward. And so there's a lot of, again, a lot of education that we need to do to property owners and to contractors in the area to ensure that people recognize the need to protect those particular systems. We also learned from the experience in California that this was ended up being a fairly large issue in a number of jurisdictions, that unfortunately some of these systems did get damaged in the cleanup efforts. And so our planning and building department, subsurface division in that department are going to be very busy providing information and setting up the necessary permitting processes to assist people in the future. We've even had discussions going so far as providing staff in the Lincoln City area once or twice a week for sometime in the future, so that people, as they need to complete their permit process and all the paperwork, they can access that information directly in Lincoln City. Another area that we would like to get some assistance in is insurance. We do know that while a number of the property owners were uninsured and therefore need additional resources to recover from this crisis, that a lot of people do have insurance. But understanding that insurance policy, understanding the limitations of that policy is extremely important. We know that the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation is actually providing some wildfire insurance seminars. They're doing these remotely online, and that is a service they do provide for consumers, as to how to understand your insurance policy and how it works, and can assist people if they have questions around those policies. I think that we would like to go further than that. I know that some jurisdictions have actually requested that resources be provided locally on site, and that could be combined with some of the information provided by FEMA or our other county services to make available to people if they have questions around insurance. And then finally, there are a number of community services that are provided by state agencies, by the county, including behavioral health, environmental health, those kinds of things. Utilities are providing information as they work on restoring service to everybody out there. But we think it's important that people have somebody they can go to help them figure out, what resources are available out there and who do they go to for doing that. So we're looking at contracting with a nonprofit to provide basically an assistance navigator or a case manager, as it might be, to really get that guidance for people who are impacted by the fire, to really tell them these are the available resources that you can utilize here, and how do you access those resources, and serve as kind of, again, a navigator to get them connected to those resources. So we're working on setting that up, and more information on that as that's developed.
Yeah, and I would just add to that last piece that I have been having conversations with a local nonprofit who already has staff that kind of specialize in this navigation service. So we are kind of going back and forth on what that might look like. And besides just the expertise on being able to navigate these services, many of which of these people may not have ever navigated these services before. I think it's also really important that we have people that are from North Lincoln County and just familiar with the area and the community there, and familiar with some of the nonprofits and help that's available to North Lincoln County residents. So hopefully, again, in the next few days, we'll have something more concrete in place, but we are kind of moving forward and having discussions with the group on doing that.
And I guess the final thing is related to all the activities we've described here. Jenny, why don't you talk a little bit about continuing to provide information to people accessing the printed or digital materials that they'll need and how we might go about doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. So at the beginning, when we worked with the public information officers with the fire incident management team, it's sort of referred to as like a trap line. So depending on where your community members are that are affected, you get printed materials out to those locations. Well, we did that in the very early stages, but then everyone's kind of gone back to different locations. And then also looking about how we might use our website in the future. And so I'm working with Casey Miller, our public information officer, and really transitioning the information to a true recovery website that will then have a placeholder for each of these different compartments or service providers that have something to give to the community members, or something the community members will actually rely on as they go through this recovery phase. So that's just sort of a digital front. Then we're also looking at how do we communicate with those individuals that are affected and perhaps the rest of the county doesn't necessarily want to get that information. So we'll be using the online survey that the folks gave in, plus the data collection process that we have to really narrow that down to those folks that need to continue to receive that information specifically from us as a county service provider to help them navigate that. Also, when that FEMA team comes in for that outreach center, that will be another way that we'll be able to reach those targeted audiences to make sure we've got the right information. We can post our information there. Also at the donation site where those family members come in still today to come in and get those resources that they need. So it's really about making sure that we look at that community member. How are they used to receiving information? What works for them based on how their continuity of life is? You know, they may still be in a hotel room, so we should get materials to the hotel rooms, not just rely on those community members to come out to find that resource information and perhaps in a printed copy. So it's really, again, just I think kind of what Mr. Belmont alluded to is we're really now developing that recovery strategy into sort of branches. And one branch that County Emergency Management Public Information will continue is going to be that conduit of reliable information, appropriate information, and timely information to those who are affected. And we know that some things change very quickly, just like FEMA. They indicated they could stay through the weekend, and then I heard on Sunday, confirmed on Monday morning, that they're able to stay through Friday of this week. So getting that information out to the media so they can get it onto their...
Oh, Jenny, we lost you.
You
Jenny,
can't hear me?
Oh, now we hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not quite sure what my phone did. I'm still there. So anyways, we're just talking about how we organize all that into different branches for recovery, and then really making sure that we meet that individual community members' needs for information on what's best for them, not necessarily what's easy for us.
Great. All right, Wayne, are you through your updates?
That's the update.
Okay, Jenny, are you through with updates?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Hunt, questions or comments for Wayne or Jenny?
Yes. I guess my concern is the housing aspect of this disaster. We've talked about power, water, debris cleanup, and septic systems, and those are all, in my mind, relatively short term compared to the challenge of rebuilding the homes. And I think it's particularly important to note that much of the housing that was destroyed is workforce housing, which we all know is terribly short in our county. And the point of my concern, and I guess my question is, if you look at what happened in California, particularly in the Paradise fire, demographics similar to what we see in Lincoln County and in the Echo Mountain fire, and 10% of the houses have been rebuilt in a year. So that would mean, roughly speaking, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 homes would be rebuilt a year from now, and that concerns me greatly. So my question is, what can we do? What have we learned from what others have seen as the hurdles and the challenges to improve the ability of those homeowners to rebuild, because this housing is critical in our county?
This is Wayne, and I think actually that is the critical issue that we heard from everybody who's gone through this experience before, is to what to do for interim housing while you do the recovery and rebuilding. or in our case, replacement process. Remember, and this particular fire, I don't remember the exact stats, but a significant number of the housing stock that was destroyed here were manufactured or mobile homes. And so those are different and have different challenges in terms of replacing those than a stick-built home, has. And so I think there's a number of challenges for us to deal with this, what I'll call the interim housing situation. What do you do between now and the time that people actually have that opportunity to rebuild or replace? And that's part of why we're asking for Red Cross to continue providing those housing services at least for another 60 days while we put together those options. What do we do on an interim basis, and then how do we assist people going forward? But there's no more significant challenge, I think, than the housing situation. It was already a challenge in Lincoln County, especially affordable housing, and it will continue to be.
Okay, well, I'll look forward. I think it's important to, in my mind, I distinguish between the intermediate solution, i.e. finding housing for the people that have to rebuild, but what do we do to improve the ability of those homeowners to rebuild so that a year from now, we're more than 10% of those homes have been rebuilt. So I understand a lot of work needs to be done, and I'll look forward to hearing more about how we're addressing that particular challenge. That's all I have.
I would disagree with, or not disagree, I would agree with you, Commissioner Hunt. That's my number one concern and worry through all of this is just the ability to get people rebuilt. And we know we have challenges here, getting homes built here in general, including a very, wet, rainy season to top it off. And we just know we have existing challenges in that. So I'm very concerned about it as well. Commissioner Hall, questions or comments for Ginny or Council Belmont?
Yes, please, and thank you. In my commissioner report, I'll talk about a few things I've been working on related to housing, but relating to this report. Manager Damaris, you said FEMA is now staying, did I hear correctly, through Friday of this week?
Yes, we put that out this morning to local media, all the cooperators, and we actually did a Lincoln alerts to all opt-in providers across the county, because again, we don't know where those folks that have wind damage might actually be, and that was really the best way for us to try and reach everyone.
Excellent. Usually I'm pretty good at keeping up with my alerts, but this has been a day on the fly, so I'm really glad to hear that, and I think, and the possibility of an ongoing FEMA physical presence is wonderful as well, not only for all the reasons you cited, which are very valid ones, but frankly, I'm hearing from people, even maybe they do have computer access and some degree of computer literacy, they visit a few websites, do email and maybe social media, but they realize that when they're entering the realm of government programs and applications, that it's a whole different and scary and complicated realm for them. So the more direct face-to-face contact, I think that's wonderful. Let's see. There's so much here and so much happening. Okay, actually, this would be a question for Chair Jacobson and your contact with OHA today about them doing assessments and inspections on these water systems. One question, I've heard from some of the folks who are customers of one community system in particular, where they've been told for, lower level of the system may be functional soon, but for like the higher ground, it may take some time. Is there, so far, I haven't found a good answer for her, and there may not be one, whether there is any sort of assistance from any agency at any level to bring potable water in temporarily. There's only one purveyor who's doing water deliveries countywide, and they've looked at the dollars and cents of it, and at least the neighbors who are talking about this really feel like, you know, they don't have the resources to do that, that their homes would otherwise be occupiable. You know, are we on the, is there any potential help for them?
I don't know the answer to that, Commissioner Hall, but I will add it to my list.
Okay.
OH8 questions. My list so far is assess systems, assess water, and, you know, figure out what it would do to fix said systems, but you know, and talk about interim solutions if those are not easily fixable, and that sounds like it would be a potential interim solution. So I'll add that to my list.
Great, thank you. Great work, everybody. That's all the questions and comments I have at this time. Thank you.
All right. One thing I would like to discuss in relation to the Echo Mountain complex fire while we're on the topic is, you know, there's a number of nonprofits, existing nonprofits, and actually a couple of new ones that are really going above and beyond and providing direct assistance to people displaced and impacted by fires and by fires in our community. And I would like to see if we can get some board approval or just a nod at this point. I would like to take some dollars out of our existing social service nonprofit pot that we have and do an interim emergency, you know, kind of grant process, an easy process for those nonprofits providing direct service. You know, usually we use that pot once a year in our existing nonprofit social service grants, but I would like to use at least a portion of that money now for nonprofits for an emergency grant to give them some funding right now. If the board's kind of agreeable with a thumbs up or a head nod, then maybe I'll write something up and bring it back for all of you to look at and approve, if that's a direction you're okay with.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Hunt?
Yeah, I'm fine with the idea. Certainly, we need, I don't know what the budgets are, and I don't know the impact on budgets, but certainly the concept is good.
Okay, great. I will work with finance and you know, put something together for kind of more thorough review next week, and hopefully we can, you know, get those out the door relatively soon after that. All right, moving on to item B here, Lincoln County Public Health COVID-19 update presented by Rebecca Austin, our Public Health Director. And I believe that Director Austin first has an introduction to make. Rebecca, are you there?
She's there, but she's muted.
Hello,
There you
can
are.
hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, hello. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. This is Rebecca Austin, the Health Department Director, and I do have with me today our brand new Deputy Director for Public Health, Florence Portal. Here she is. This is her first day, and she is here in the nick of time because in the next 2 weeks I'm going to be on vacation. So she's gonna be flying solo after this week. So she will be attending your board meeting next week and the following week for me. So hopefully you'll get a chance to meet her in person soon, but I'm thrilled that she's here. And she's got some great experience to bring to our little health department. So it's very exciting for us.
Well, welcome. First and foremost, welcome. We're really glad to have you on board with us. And you know, you're joining us at a little bit of a crazy time, but thank you for joining us. We appreciate your help.
Yes, of course. I'm so very grateful for the opportunity and very excited to join the team. I've been following a few of your meetings, and it's very exciting to join a team that is very committed to the health and welfare of its people. So I'm very, very glad to be here.
Thank you. All right, Rebecca.
Yeah, so I see you started out right away with the reopening phase 2 data. So is this the current one? see, can you roll through that? I don't know. Yeah, this is the current one. Yeah. So we meet all of the indicators except for the one, the percent of tests that are positive in the last 7 days. We got a red X there. But I did include some more data so we can take a closer look at just what that means. And again, I think because our numbers are small, that's why you're seeing this. So
Yeah, and just, Rebecca, could I interject real quickly on the other data, if we could scroll back real quick?
sure.
Sorry, so just a couple of constituent inputs that we've gotten that I just wanted to kind of clear up. One is a comment that, we were told we had to meet all 6 of the health criteria, but we didn't, and we still got to phase 2, so that's confusing. Just a note that actually several weeks ago, we did meet all 6. They all lined up, and we were okay, so we did meet them. And so we did get approval, and even though we are slightly up and beyond trend on that one, given that we had meet all the criteria and our numbers are relatively low, OHA still felt comfortable moving us forward into phase 2. So we did have to meet them all, and we did. And then the second note that a couple of people have written about, if you scroll down just a little bit, is the black dots, and it does say it on top of the chart, but black dots are good. That doesn't mean we're not meeting a criteria. The black dots mean that our numbers are so low that the criteria doesn't really apply or is not applicable. So black dots are good things, and I just wanted to correct that. So go ahead.
Right, and again, I think as we go through the rest of the data, things will become more clear. So let's start with our testing results. So this really speaks to the one that we're getting the X on. So remember that the brown bars are the negative tests, the green bars are the positive tests over time, and then the squiggly line is the positivity rate. So you can see at the very far end that a week ago, Saturday, we are climbing in our number of tests, and we hardly have any positives. Yet we had, I think, one more positive than we did the week before. So it did go up. So again, when you have those really small numbers, we have to keep the trends in mind, because if it were to spike like we saw in the end of May, 1st of June, then that would be a concern, but that's not what we're seeing right now. So then the next one is really the demographics that don't change much. You can see that it's still the same. It's the highest among our 20 to 29-year-olds, and then it steps down considerably until we get to our 80 pluses, and then it goes up again. So this has not changed. This continues to be our challenge, is our younger adults. And it doesn't necessarily mean that like the news is always proclaiming they're out partying, but it means that they're more in some of the jobs that are higher risk and the essential worker type positions where we have seen more of our outbreaks. So then the next one is our age group distribution by type. And so again, you can see the yellow bar does claim just what I was saying, that the yellow bar is the outbreak. So if you worked in a restaurant or a fish packing plant and you were between the ages of 20 and 29, yeah, you were very high risk, and that this does bear that out. And the other thing that we're looking at is the blue bar, which is our community spread that we don't really know how they got it or where they got it. So that's, for the most part, those are our two areas that we look at. The blue bar, of course, is one of the areas that is a metric that we want to meet. So we want to keep that minimal, which I think we're doing a pretty good job at. And then the next one is this squiggly line here. And I really our data guru, Susan Traxel, really worked with me on this today because it's over such a long period of time. It tells kind of an interesting story, but I think what people are really interested in seeing and understanding is what's happened in the last month, like really what's happened in the last month. So if you scroll down to the next chart, you'll see that we kind of blew up the last part of that long line and just went from the 20th of August to the 25th of September. So you can kind of see, and if you know, the very bottom line is we had 0 cases. The next gray line up there are 2 cases. And so it skips up by 2, so 2, 4, 6. So you can see on the 22nd, we had 6 cases, 6 new cases. And then it plummeted down to 0. And then it went up to 3. Then it went down to 1, and then it went up to 4. So you can just see how we kind of march across here. And if we were to draw more of an epi curve that would flatten that out a little bit more, we would see a slight decline over time. So that is what we want to see. And because we're dealing with most of our line is in between the 0 and the 2. So that is really quite amazing. And this is based on every 2 days. So we see 1 case, we saw 0 cases. Oh, on the 19th, we saw 2 cases. Then we dropped down to 0. So that's a really good indicator. And that does show us that when we spike up to 2 cases, we're going to get a higher positivity rate. So in a 1.5, I remember back in June and July, I was coveting, 1, 2, 3% positivity rate when we were off the charts with 10%. So we're right where we need to be. I feel quite confident that moving into phase 2, we'll be in pretty good shape. But saying that, I don't know if this is the appropriate time. You may want to ask me some questions about the data first. But in saying that, I think we could feel good about moving into phase 2. 2 things I want to say. One is that we're the only non-metro county in the state that hasn't moved to phase 2. And I think that was deliberate. We wanted to be very careful. We had limited resources and we didn't want to overstretch ourselves. So I think that's the other thing I'm going to say is that when we move into phase 2, it doesn't mean we can all take our masks off and hang out and go to parties. We still have to be very diligent. We have to wear a mask. We have to maintain 6-foot distancing, good hand washing, parties no more than 10 people, and you have to do the 6-foot distancing and the mask wearing at those parties. I'm not saying that we need to have parties, don't get me wrong here, but I know that people are really weary and, we're social creatures. So I know people are going to want to get together when we move into phase 2. And I just really want to urge everybody to do it cautiously, do it smartly, and, enjoy yourselves, but do it carefully because this is our new normal for quite a while now.
Thanks, Rebecca. I was actually going to ask you for some phase 2 wisdom, but you got ahead of me, which is great. So just a big thank you to you and all of your staff for everything you've done. And I was also just going to correct one thing you said and say that, yes, while we were cautious on phase 2, there was a large period of time, a couple of months of time that we were not eligible for phase 2 because we had a large outbreak. We were on a governor's watch list, so there was a large portion of time where that was just completely not an option for us at all. So
that's true. Thank you for reminding me.
It wasn't just us. There was a period of time that we just were not eligible. Period. So, any questions from other commissioners? Commissioner Hunt, questions for Rebecca or Florence?
Okay, I got myself unmuted. Well, first of all, welcome Florence to Lincoln County. I understand you have worked in another coastal county, Coos County, before joining us here. And that's good news because you've got a lot of not only experience within our state, but experience along the coast. So welcome to our team, and I look forward to working with you. And I would begin by apologizing. I was on the radio this morning, and I forgot that with the current order before the board, if we take no action, then phase 2 would be entered effective tomorrow. I think I indicated that it would actually take a vote of the Board of Commissioners, and that is not the case. So I apologize if I confused people. And the last thing I'd say is I think this has already been said, but I think it's important to maybe say it a different way. While we see a red X for the trend in positive cases over the last 7 days, one of the data that I feel is really important is to look at the percentage of positive cases. And I've been tracking it daily since the outbreak started. And if you look at the month of August, our percentage of positives was 6.3, and July 3.1. So far, this is through the data as of yesterday, or the data that was released today reflecting yesterday. For the month of September, we're at 1.8. We've only had 16 cases, and our last death, if I remember, was back in August, I think the 24th. So again, our numbers are small. Our percentage of positives are very low for the month, and certainly I think reflective of the good efforts of the Public Health Department and our community residents and visitors too, that are, I think, doing a good job of wearing face coverings and practicing social distancing and washing our hands, all of which have helped us keep the spread of the virus down, and I think warrants moving to phase 2 effective tomorrow.
All right, Commissioner Hall, anything you'd like to add or questions?
Just a couple of things. First, Florence, I'd like to add my welcome. Glad to have you on board, even though, well, it's all of 2020, but talk about, you know, sometimes when things are busy, we say it's like drinking from a fire hose, but 2020 is drinking from 3 fire hoses at once. I think the discussion has covered, you know, covered the numbers, covered the trends, covered the questions that I've seen from a couple of citizens. But, you know, I think this is important context, and I wonder if either of you would like to address this, because I think the headlines last week from a lot of counties looking at the overall state trend were not good, that things are really starting to spike again in some places. But if you look, you know, if you glance back at the chart we saw earlier and listen to this, our numbers are staying down. And I think it is really important for people to understand that point, that we're an outlier, isn't it fair to say, but an outlier in a very good way right now.
Yes, I would agree with you, Commissioner. And I feel like in some ways, you know, no community is going to dodge this. So I think some of the communities that we're seeing increased cases in have been the ones that have escaped bigger numbers over the summer. So maybe, you know, it just kind of makes its way through every community. And I think that's what we're seeing, you know, some of our neighbors that kind of dodged it. And I don't know if that's because schools are coming back on, you know, opening back up, or the fires had something to do with it. But yeah, it's not something that's easily predictable, that's for sure. And so we'll be watching very carefully as we move into phase 2, and keeping our messaging out there and making sure that people understand that phase 2 doesn't mean that we're done with this thing and we can go back to normal. This is our new normal.
Well, great job, team. Thanks, everybody. And this is a milestone to celebrate, I think.
I agree. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks, Rebecca. I will say we did have actually a reporter reach out that wanted us to discuss the new framework issued for schools and Lincoln County's number. I feel like we really ought to do that when we have the school district on here with us. So I've reached out and have invited someone from the school district to join us next week. So we'll kind of be having that discussion with them in terms of the new guidance that came out and where our numbers are and where schools kind of feel they are. And getting kids back, again, that's kind of a school district decision, not a county decision, but it's very, very important to us. So we'll be having that discussion hopefully next week, as long as they're available to join us. All right, phase 2 update from Wayne. I think we kind of let the cat out of the bag already. But Wayne, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yes, the cat is out of the bag. No, I think that last week we had discussions with OHA Director Allen about the trending that we're seeing, and I think that Director Austin has now given us an update of where we stand in the last week or so. The last formal piece to move forward into phase 2 was to get actually confirmation from the governor that we could move forward. And you have received that. You received a letter from the governor dated September 25th, 2020, that indicated that we may proceed into phase 2 tomorrow. And I don't know if you wanted to read that or.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll bring it up here. I think Christy has the ability to do that. And we did send that letter out on a press release. I think it was very late Friday, because that's when we got it, is very late Friday, but I'll just read this for everybody. It says, thank you for your effort. Thank you for the effort you, your residents, and your public health systems have put into containing the spread of COVID-19 in Lincoln County. As mentioned in my August 2020 letter, we've been in discussion regarding a mutually agreed upon date for the safe reopening in Lincoln County. I am pleased to inform you that your county continues to meet the required prerequisites and may enter phase 2 on September 29th, 2020. I want to acknowledge Lincoln County local public health, community partners, contact tracers, and residents who all came together to decrease the transmission of COVID-19 in your county. And then here are several bullet points. Over the past 2 weeks, September 6th through 19th, Lincoln County has had a total of 4 cases. This is a case rate of 8.3 per 100,000 people. The county has reported an average of 0.29 cases per day over the past 2 weeks. Over the past 2 MMWR weeks, 75% of cases could not be traced to a known source. There are no notable recent outbreaks. As we all know by now, reopening does not come without risks. With every restriction lifted, we know transmission of the virus has the potential to increase. The Oregon Health Authority will be monitoring the spread of COVID-19 in your county and throughout the state, and will be ready to work with you if any concerns arise. Thank you for all of your hard work and vigilance on behalf of Oregonians. So that's the letter we received late Friday, officially kind of allowing us to enter phase 2 as of tomorrow.
And I think that's it for the update.
I think that's it. Any other discussion points from commissioners on phase 2? Commissioner Hunt?
No.
No. Okay, Commissioner Hall?
I'm sorry, I was muted, but no. This is good.
I feel like it's been a long time coming, but I'm really pleased with where our numbers are at, and saw some, hiring signs and windows this weekend as I was driving around, and this is good, and hopefully we can sustain the effort and stay where we're at. So, all right, next up on our agenda, commissioner reports. I feel like I've mostly said my report in the Echo wildfire update, really working on water and some cleanup stuff and finding navigator services. So I feel like I already kind of covered that earlier. Commissioner Hunt, anything you would like to report?
No, I have nothing at this time.
Okay, and Commissioner Hall, I believe you did have a report to share.
Yes, I do. And also I'd like to just share perspectives. You know, all three of us are working different angles of the wildfire response, and I ended up having the opportunity to be present at each of the 3 days that our multi-agency resource center was operable. I know that both of you had walkthrough tours as well, but to avoid violating public meeting law, we kind of waved at each other across the room. So now I think this is a chance to share with both of you, as well as the public at large, how impressive really the event was. The number of, you know, having FEMA boots on the ground there, so many different county departments, nonprofits, the Red Cross and many others, some private businesses that are in the position to help people with cleanup and recovery. The first 90 minutes the center was open, there was kind of an initial burst of people, and some long lines, especially for the FEMA folks. But after that, it was just a nice, smooth, steady flow. And, you know, it's hard to generalize, but I saw two types of folks again and again. You know, there were some people who had notebook in hand, were very focused, said, okay, I know I need to go see FEMA. I know I want to talk to county planning. I know I want to talk with North Lincoln Sanitary. And then frankly, there were other folks, and no surprise at all, but I know our hearts go out to all of them, who just kind of walked in there still with a dazed look. And essentially what I read into a lot of faces was, you know, wow, it's wonderful that all these folks are here, but where do I begin? And, you know, even though she may not want me to call her out on this, but Manager Damaris, I saw her so many times when she saw somebody with that look, if she could, she would drop what she was doing and basically act as a personal navigator with them. I kind of became an informal navigation person that people would come to me. I could answer some basic questions, and then when it got too complex, I said, no, but if you just go around this corner, you'll find the Red Cross booth, and I think they could help you. So really, it was something amazing and good logistically, and applauding everybody who was part of that. So housing, you know, we've got, as we've talked about, we need to address immediate needs, interim needs, you know, where people might have to live for several months or maybe even a year or two until there is permanent replacement. But with my position as chair of the Oregon Housing Stability Council, also my role in housing policy for the Association of Counties, and then our nonprofit land trust, Proud Ground, we have had a lot of conversations already. You know, no definite solutions, but this is where AOC, I think, helps us present a united front to state agencies, the legislature, the governor's office, that sadly many other communities are, you know, terribly impacted with major loss of housing stock. So there's one funding source that we're hoping to kind of nudge things along with. I think there's been some internal discussion in our office, Project Turnkey, which potentially could allow us to purchase motels and hotels to create permanently affordable housing. But as always, you know, when you're talking state and federal money, it's complicated, but we're trying to move the bureaucracy on that. The state also has just opened up a hardest hit fund. There might not be a lot of money in play. $20 million is the figure I'm hearing statewide. But yeah, I think with a united focus, I just want people to know the conversations are happening. A lot of people are focused on this as one of the biggest, if not the biggest jobs in recovery. So those were the things I wanted to share.
Thanks, Commissioner Hall. And just to add to your comments on housing and the comments made by Commissioner Hunt earlier, I feel like this is going to be one of those situations where it's not one thing, you know, not one project or one housing solution. But I think you actually have a saying, which is it's not a silver bullet, but silver buckshot. And
Yes, and I borrowed it from another presenter, but yeah, I mean, we've got to
Right.
have
Yeah.
ownership. Oh, can we shoot down one rumor? Normally, I don't even like to acknowledge rumors, but this is a very persistent one. I've heard several times. Our planning director, Anno Husing, has heard that if folks had a single wide and it was destroyed, that they would not be allowed to replace it with a new single wide if that's what they chose, unless they went through a time-consuming and and expensive conditional use process. No, that's not the case. I mean, there are a few caveats, but basically, if you had a single wide, it was permitted at the time it went in. You essentially are most likely to fall under a grandfather clause and have ease. And the conversation I know we've all had conversations with Director Husing, but I know the message he and his team were really trying to get out last week at the Multi-Agency Resource Center is we're not going to be a roadblock. We're going to do everything we can to facilitate you rebuilding as quickly as possible. As soon as all these other things, environmental hazards and cleanup are difficult and complicated things, but county planning is not going to be an impediment to people.
Yeah, I have had conversations with him as well, and I also know they're doing everything they can to try to protect septic systems, which seems minor unless you own a septic system, and then you know what that investment and cost is. And so, they're really trying to create maps and actually put physical signage up and that kind of stuff so that hopefully those systems can be protected and not damaged in the process of cleanup. So.
Great.
All right. Anything else in your report, Commissioner Hall?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks to both you and Commissioner Hunt for everything both of you are doing. I feel like it's nice to have three of us because I don't think I could do all of this myself. So I'm glad we're all working on different things. So
this would be one of those times where it would be nice if it was there was a dozen of us, but we're all doing what we can.
Yeah, and I will say there's been a lot of support coming in from neighboring counties and our state elected officials and many cities too stepped up initially within the county and are still working on things now. So it's good to have them joining arms as well.
May I share something else along those lines? I know I've been gabbing, but a commissioner in another county, as soon as the fires were really kicking up, they offered, they launched a great donation and collection drive. And a commissioner from that county contacted me Friday evening. And fortunately for that county, they were spared. But he said, not only do they have clothing, food, personal needs, but they've got gift cards and other items, and said, can we use them? And I said, oh, Alex, can we? And so hopefully this week, not sure whether they will be delivering them to our official collection site here at the fairgrounds in Newport. I also let them know about a couple of the larger community sites in Lincoln City, but again, that's where the networking among counties and counties helping each other out in times of need really comes through in a beautiful way.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Good teamwork.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope well, I don't hope at some point there's another emergency that we can pay it forward to another county, but I know if that situation arises, we would be here for them in the same way that they were here for us. So, all right, next up under decision and action, I'll pass this over to Wayne. I think there's been an agenda change, but I'll let him talk about that.
Thank you, Chair Jacobson. There has been a change here. I think because this is a non-emergency action we're taking here, it just gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. What we've got is the uniform rate reporting format, which is required annually from our franchised solid waste haulers. Get that right. Thompson's had actually delivered this to us in a timely fashion early on in the year, and we had not formally acknowledged that we received that. So I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge that we've received the necessary information. We had the report. It's actually in your packet there. They're going to come back later and do a formal presentation and make the specific request on a rate adjustment. We're not going to do that today. So that'll be happening sometime in the next few weeks. We'll get that scheduled. But by doing the acknowledgement right now, I've taken care of what they needed to have happened sooner rather than later.
Okay. So I think with that, we are done on our agenda unless there is other business. Wayne, is there anything else we need to discuss?
There is not.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt, anything else?
Nothing here.
Okay, Commissioner Hall, anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, so with that, we will go ahead and adjourn our meeting, although I will mention we have a joint meeting Wednesday, September 30th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. This is a joint work session with the City of Toledo, which will be done virtually. And then we have our next Board of Commissioners meeting Monday, October 5th, 2020 at 3 p.m. again virtually. All right, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.